To say Minecraft has been a big success in the gaming world would be a massive understatement. Having grossed billions of dollars over its years and seen massive growth in its modded community, Minecraft has definitely left its impact on players. The interesting thing, however, is this. Minecraft itself has no story, or at least, not in the traditional way. Sure, players who defeat the Ender Dragon receive a scrolling wall of text invoking the amazing qualities of human ingenuity and creativity, but outside of that, there's nothing really to be had. We don't know what the creeper is thinking as it trundles across the plains to attack us, nor do we know why the fortresses and mine shafts we can explore exist. They're just there, for us to explore and fight in. Enter Minecraft Visual Novel Edition, a game in which you play as a man with amnesia and found by a very nice-looking slime. I'm going to break this game down the way I've done before, by looking at the game's characters, dialogue, gameplay, and overall narrative to determine how strong the tale of this QB story is. First, I'll look into the gameplay. This is a visual novel, which means that there's very little interaction on our part as the player. This allows us to sit back and take in the scenery, dialogue, and character sprites at our own pace. Also, this lack of agency on our part helps portray that we are not the main character, or really any other player within the story, but rather an outside observer, taking in the narrative. By taking away our control, as it were, we're forced to focus on the dialogue and characters rather than worrying about decisions or combat. Next, we'll talk about the characters. The three main ones we interact with are the main character, who I'll call Steve, because, you know, Minecraft Steve. Mica, the older of the two slime sisters, and Kiki, the youngest sister. Given that this is a fan-made game that is still a work in progress, we don't have a lot of time to get to know these characters, but we can assume some things based off of how they interact with each other, and clues about them that were given through the storyline. Steve is, at the very least, middle-aged, and we know this because of Jade, a girl from Steve's memories calling him Grandpa, and, unless this is some weird title or nickname I'm not understanding, means he's family to this little girl. Also, perhaps it's just me, but the fact that he's upfront with the Slime Sisters in his dialogue, and playful with Kiki, certainly seem to convey some qualities I would expect of an older gentleman or a grandpa with a family of his own. We know that Steve is trying to regain his memories, as the flashback he experiences plague him, jolting him awake from sleep and shooting pain through his forehead. In other words, he has a drive, a quest or a mission, if you will, that sets up the start of the story. It's an older trope, sir, but it checks out. Next is Mica, the older sister, or rather, the middle one. Mica tells us about halfway through the story that Kiki and she had an older sister who died before the human-monster war. A conflict the story mentions early on to explain why monsters and humans don't shed blood over each other anymore. Though, some negative feelings do seem to linger from this conflict. But, anyways, Mica seems to be very protective of her sister, asking her to leave when a less-than-ideal conversation pops up, as well as warning Steve to watch himself when everyone was sleeping. The implication here being that grabbing for some slime booty would be, undesired by Mica. We don't know much about Kiki other than she is more or less the standard cute little sister character. She's cheery, bubbly, and playful, and enjoys a nice game of hide-and-seek. And that's pretty standard fare for the character type. We don't get much exposure to Kiki other than that, so this is really all we have to work with. Perhaps in later chapters we'll see more, but for the time being, Kiki's just a cute little sister. The dialogue is not my favorite section to look into for this game. I don't want to be condescending, as the creator of the game has mentioned that they're aware of the grammatical issues in the game, and they're actively working on fixing it, so I'd rather not focus on the obvious issues there, and instead focus on the content rather than the syntax. This section is probably the most important aspect for a visual novel, as regardless of whether it's the character speaking or the narrator setting the scene, the words we see are the core of how we understand the setting and actors. This chapter of the visual novel seems to be a short way to start the journey we're going to be experiencing in the rest of the story. As we found out, Steve has no memories, and has an intense drive to find out more about this Jade character, whomever they may be. This drive is strong, given that he ignores Mica's, shall we say, advances, and leaves both her and Kiki behind the same night. Given how comfortable Steve seemed to be staying with Kiki and Mica before the memories came to him, he left them pretty readily. Overall, this game makes me feel mixed feelings. On the one hand, I can definitely see the potential, as I think the idea of infusing an otherwise storyless setting with a vibrant plot is fascinating, and especially for a franchise that I personally have a strong attachment to. There's something interesting to be said of the reason why we, in Minecraft, fight monsters being due to an underlying racial slog, rather than the standard mindless monster mashu we're presented with. However, this package is wrapped up in a very unpolished box, which sadly takes away from the beautiful possibilities within it. I believe that with some fine-tuning and perhaps another session at the storyboarding table, this could be a fantastic product of passion and love for a game that has captured so many hearts. So here's how this will work. I'm going to go through 4 key aspects that I think help make or break the story. The gameplay design choices, the characters we're presented with, the dialogue of and from these characters, and finally, the overarching narrative. Over the course of the journey, I'll make some jokes, throw in some good visuals, and bang, we have a video. First, gameplay. Well, there's not much to say here in terms of our